The only evidence of this crime has been erased, but someone saw what no one was supposed to see and decided to break the silence. Imagine a crime so well covered up that the only concrete proof simply vanished. A tape. Yes, a recording that, according to those who saw it, contained a deadly secret. In the early days of the investigation, it was all the police had. The crime scene was clean, no fingerprints, no noise, but that tape, silent yet powerful, had something that could change everything, until it disappeared, vanished as if it had never existed. Have you ever felt that way? Feeling that the truth was within your grasp, and suddenly it slips away like smoke through your fingers? The strangest part, no one seemed to know where it had gone. The defense claimed they never received it. The prosecutor swore it was part of the case. And the investigators? They fell silent. Some said it was damaged. Others claimed it had been accidentally erased. But you know what doesn't make sense? That this tape, the only recording of a crucial moment in the case, was the only thing to disappear amid a pile of irrelevant documents. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you. For years, this case has been marked by gaps, by versions that never fit together. But everything changed when someone no one expected to exist, a forgotten witness, said 7 words that reopened all the wounds. I saw what was on the tape. And that's when everything begins to change. Because this statement not only reignites an investigation, but also sheds light on something even darker. Why would someone destroy such important evidence? Were they protecting a guilty person? Or trying to bury truths that could never come to light? This story goes beyond a simple crime. It reveals the darker side of criminal psychology, where silence becomes more dangerous than any scream, where innocent people bear the weight of a deadly secret, while others manipulate everything behind the scenes. The psychological game behind this is intense, and the question no one has been able to answer until today is, what exactly was on that tape? The face of a murderer? A muffled scream? A whispered confession? Or something so disturbing it had to be erased from history? That's why this case has never been forgotten. Because deep down everyone feels that justice has been deceived, that someone laughed inside when the tape was destroyed, and that, even without physical evidence, the truth still lives, hidden in those who saw, in those who stayed silent, in those who allowed time to swallow the clues. But you know, time doesn't erase everything. And when a single witness breaks the silence, the game changes completely. Now, if that tape never made it to court, what else has been hidden from the public? Maybe you've felt something similar. That feeling that something is wrong, but no one wants to talk about it. A silence that weighs more than any accusation. And that's why I want to invite you to be part of this conversation. If this topic resonates with you, if in some way it has touched you or reminded you of something you've lived or heard, leave it in the comments. Sometimes a simple opinion can open new perspectives, and here every voice matters. And look, if you're still here, it's because you also feel these stories deserve to be told. So go ahead and hit that like button on this video, because it shows YouTube that this kind of content matters. It shows that it's worth continuing to bring stories that move us, that reveal the darker and more human side of criminal psychology. And if you want to walk with us through the mysteries that justice couldn't solve, subscribe to the channel. Your participation here is what helps this space grow, reach more people, and keep alive the search for answers that silence tried to erase. Because when we share, comment, and unite around these stories, something changes. The truth gains strength. And sometimes that's all it takes to make the silence start to speak. The place was simple, almost mundane. An apartment at the end of the hall, beige walls, windows always closed, and no unusual activity in the neighborhood. But when the forensic experts entered, something there screamed without making a sound. The victim was lying near the armchair, the body in a position suggesting little or no defensive effort. No signs of struggle, no objects out of place, no forced doors, no broken windows. The scene looked more like a surrender than a murder, only it wasn't. There was blood. Little, but enough to make it clear that this had not been natural. The most unsettling part. No fingerprints, no footprints, No sounds captured by neighbors or external cameras. A crime committed within a void, as if the environment itself had been manipulated to erase any trace of someone's presence. This changes everything, because we are no longer talking about impulse or revenge. We are talking about control, planning, coldness. And when viewed from this angle, the inevitable question arises: why did the murderer go to such lengths to ensure that silence was the greatest accomplice of the crime? That decision to silence all signs is not just tactical, it's psychological. It showcases a mind that doesn't want to be discovered, but also doesn't want to be forgotten. Someone who understands the impact of mystery, who plays with the fear of the invisible. And when silence is so well orchestrated, it ceases to be absence and transforms into a message. The author of this crime didn't just erase traces, they left a hidden truth in the air, waiting for someone to be able to decipher it. It's as if they were saying, only the attentive will notice. And that's where the journey shifts direction. The investigation ceases to be merely about the what and starts to be about the why. What is the internal transformation of someone capable of crossing this line so calmly? What hides behind the mind of someone who leaves no traces? And if the tape that disappeared was the only thing that revealed this deeper layer, what did it say about this behavior? About this meticulous decision to erase sound, movement, evidence? Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because what seemed like just a perfect crime might hide much more than we imagine. Comment below. Silence speaks too. I want to know if you are feeling the same discomfort that I am. From the moment the crime scene was revealed, everyone expected a quick response, a fingerprint, a confession, a mistake. But what emerged was the opposite: silence. And more than that, a strange serenity in the faces of those closest to the victim. None of them had a record with the police, no violent behavior, no clear motivation. Still, something didn't fit. The testimonies, although coherent at first glance, began to show subtle noise, minor contradictions, almost imperceptible, but that carried immense weight when scrutinized carefully. One neighbor said they heard the TV on late that night, while another asserted that the apartment was in complete silence. An intimate friend mentioned that the victim was anxious in the days leading up, but the mother said everything was normal. And then there are the micro-expressions, those involuntary reactions the body reveals when the mouth lies. A gaze that darts away for a millisecond, a lip that tightens in the middle of a direct answer. It's these details that, behind the scenes of the human mind, reveal deep internal conflicts, and perhaps even a painful effort to hide a hidden truth. Most disturbing is that none of these suspects seem to have real motives for murder. But what if the motive isn't visible? What if it's linked to something that has yet to surface? A stifled betrayal, a veiled threat, an old secret, about to explode? When motivation isn't in the actions, it may lie in the intentions, and then what appears to be innocence begins to dissolve. Because silence, when it doesn't come from peace, comes from protection. And protect whom or what? The truth is that the human mind is a labyrinth, and in this case, each testimony is a trail that can lead you to revelation or deception. It's a journey of interpretation, where behavior speaks more than words, and where the decisions of each person at that specific moment may have been shaped by fear, guilt, or even a desperate attempt not to get involved. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because understanding what drives someone to silence is often what reveals what really happened that night. Write in the comments, not every innocent behaves like one. I want to see who is also attentive to the signs. The tape reached the authorities' hands like any other piece of evidence, catalogued, sealed, registered with date and time. It was part of standard procedure, nothing out of the ordinary. But days later, when investigators returned to analyze it, it was no longer there. It vanished without a trace. The entry report existed, the person responsible for receiving it confirmed, but the item had evaporated. The first responses were bureaucratic, administrative error. It must have been filed in the wrong department. Maybe it was reused by mistake. But no one could explain why a material classified as confidential was treated with such negligence. What stands out is the pattern. Whenever a case threatens to expose something larger, the truth seems to slip through fingers. This raises an uncomfortable question. What if it wasn't carelessness? What if someone needed that tape to disappear? We know that not everything that happens behind the scenes of an investigation is transparent. There is pressure, there is influence, there is fear. And in this game of interests, destroying evidence may not just be a failure, but a decision, a calculated decision, cold, thoughtful, to protect someone, or cover something much larger than a simple crime. We are talking about a piece that could change everything. That might show a face, a movement, an attitude that would put someone important against the wall. This is where the most uncomfortable part comes in. Who had access to this tape? Who had enough power to make it disappear without raising alarms? And why was this treated as a common mistake, as if vital files vanished every day without explanations? This kind of behavior reveals a mentality that places convenience above justice. And when justice is negotiated, the truth becomes currency. Now I want to dive even deeper into this issue, because the absence of the tape may speak more than its content ever could. It exposes the impact of silent decisions made away from the cameras, where intentions are not subject to judgment. It is in this dark space between what is said and what is done that the most dangerous secrets hide. Comment below. Where there's smoke, there's too much silence. I want to know if you also feel that something is off in this story. After years of silence, when the case seemed buried beneath the dust of forgetfulness, an unexpected voice emerged. Without warning, without spotlights, just a simple sentence. I saw what was on the tape. That fell like a bomb in the background of the investigation. It was no ordinary person. It was someone who had been present when the recording was shown for the first time, before it was sealed, before it disappeared. This person did not appear in official records. There was no prior testimony, nothing. Just the vivid memory of an image that everyone else pretended not to have seen. The most intriguing part was not what she claimed to have seen, but why she chose to speak only now. And here comes a point that few consider: the weight of silence. Because keeping a truth is not light. It presses down day after day, corroding from within. Often those who remain silent do so not out of complicity, but out of fear. Fear of retaliation, fear of not being believed, fear of destabilizing everything. But over time, something changes. Sometimes it's an emotional trigger, a personal loss, an internal crisis. Sometimes it's just the urgency of living with less guilt. And when guilt becomes stronger than fear, the truth begins to slip away. But the question remains, is this revelation real or constructed? Because the human mind also fabricates memories when it wants to protect itself. And in the face of such a sensitive case, so loaded with emotional tension, it is possible that this memory is a distorted reflection of trauma. Still, the account was precise, full of details that only someone who really watched could provide. The witness described expressions, gestures, muffled sounds, mentioned a figure moving in the background, someone who until then was not part of any investigative line. This changed the axis of everything. What was once speculation now seemed to have a new direction. But this new direction is unsettling, because it collides with big names, with old decisions, with sealed files. This is where the narrative turns upside down. What seemed like an unresolved case could actually be a web of intentional decisions to keep certain truths invisible. Now, I want to dive even deeper into this issue. Because if this witness is telling the truth, then the tape was not just destroyed, it was silenced by someone who could not be exposed. Comment below. Those who keep silent carry burdens. I want to understand if you also feel the weight of this entire silence. The victim's family never had closure. Years passed, and time, instead of healing, only pushed the questions into darker corners of the mind. With each visit to the cemetery, the same dilemma: how to keep living without knowing what really happened. The father avoided interviews, but wrote pages in a diary that were never published. In them, he described how he would stare blankly into the nothingness, trying to understand why everything seemed so suspended, as if the story had been paused at the most painful moment, and no one ever pressed play again. The mother, in silence, kept the last piece of clothing worn by her son, not out of attachment to the object itself, but because it was the last physical fragment of a day that no one could reconstruct. The younger brother spent years saying he still dreamed of him, not dead, but waiting for justice on the other side of the door. These are layers of suffering that do not appear in headlines. They live in the background, in small gestures, in the vacant look that replaces words. The impact of not knowing goes beyond pain. It shapes the lives of those left behind. It changes decisions, corrodes relationships, even transforms the way people love. When a family does not receive answers, everything around them begins to lose meaning. Because grief needs a period. And when that doesn't happen, the mind repetitively plays the same scene, trying to fill the voids with assumptions, fears, guilt. Silence in this case becomes a ghost. It appears in the photos no one wants to see, in the dates that make the home feel colder, in conversations that abruptly stop when the name is mentioned. It is a hidden truth that refuses to disappear. Because it was not lived to the end, it was not explained, it was not accepted. Now I want to dive even deeper into this issue, because understanding what this absence provokes is crucial to grasp the real weight of this crime. It's not just about justice. It's about lives that have continued with invisible cracks, about a journey that was interrupted without warning, and about wounds that may never heal. Comment below, the pain of silence hurts more. I want to know if you also feel this absence hitting deep, even without knowing the names. From the moment the witness revealed what she saw on the tape, investigators turned their attention to a figure that until then had gone unnoticed, a name that appeared in the files but had never been directly linked to the crime, a face present at casual meetings, an old neighbor, a family acquaintance, someone too ordinary to raise suspicions, and perhaps precisely because of that so dangerous. The most intriguing part was the pattern, cold, methodical, with no history of violence, but always present at the right moments. A kind of presence that disguises itself as coincidence, but is, in fact, control disguised as casualness. Behavioral analyses began to be conducted in silence. Indirect interviews, searches for old records, consultations with criminal psychology experts. What emerged was the portrait of a silent manipulator, not someone who shouts, who threatens, who imposes force, but one who observes, who calculates, who anticipates the movements of the people around them and constructs each step as if playing chess. A type of mind that does not act on impulse but on strategy. That does not make obvious mistakes because, before acting, has already thought through all the possible consequences. Possibly narcissistic, with traits of low-grade psychopathy, someone who learned to imitate social emotions, but who deep down doesn't feel like most. The motivation? Perhaps a past humiliation, a desire for power, or the subtle pleasure of watching others fall into an invisible trap. And what is most frightening? He knew about the existence of the camera, knew the risk, knew how far he could go. The disappearance of the tape in light of these revelations no longer seems like a mistake. It seems like part of the plan, part of a personal journey of domination, of concealment, of programmed silence. Now I want to dive even deeper into this issue, because when we start to understand how someone like that thinks, the impact goes far beyond the case. It messes with the way we see the people around us, with trust in systems, with the illusion that everything is under control. And if this type of mind is among us, what else could be hidden behind calm appearances? Write in the comments, danger doesn't always shout. I want to see who can also see beyond the obvious, and what if, after all, the truth never comes. Too light. And if every loose thread, every fragmented clue, every dubious testimony is the closest anyone can get to reality. This is the wound that remains open, even years later. Because while most people move on with their lives, those who remain, investigators, family members, even a few reporters, live with a constant feeling of incompleteness, as if the story were locked somewhere inaccessible, with the key lost among fear, omission, and time. Justice, as much as it tries, has its limits. And that hurts. There are cases where the truth is not buried with the victim's body, but with the silence of the living. People who saw, who heard, who know, but chose not to speak. Whether out of self-preservation, involvement, or convenience. Silence in this context is not the absence of sound. It is choice, it is shield. It is the subtlest and most dangerous weapon that a guilty person can wield, because it does not require physical strength, nor even an elaborate lie. It just requires saying nothing. And when no one says anything, the sensation is that everything is just fine, even when everything is wrong. The frustration of investigators comes from there. From knowing that behind the shallow evidence and the gaps in the process lies something that cannot be accessed with technology or interrogations. There exists an invisible pact among those who would rather let the past remain nebulous. It is in these moments that we realize the perfect crime may not be the one without evidence, but the one where the truth was suffocated before it could even breathe, where every decision, from the destroyed tape to the postponed testimony, built a wall around the facts, and now what remains is trying to decipher what has never been said. Now I want to dive even deeper into this issue, because accepting that we may never know what happened is, in itself, a silent violence, a psychological wound that affects not only those involved, but anyone who believes in the importance of truth. It's worth noting, silence also judges. I want to know who here also feels that weight that no one sees, but that keeps spreading. If you've made it this far, it's because something in this silence has touched you as well. Perhaps due to unanswered questions, or maybe because of the feeling that there's more than what is being said. And that's precisely why this space exists, for us to think together, reflect, and connect the dots that many prefer to ignore. So if this type of content makes sense to you, if it provokes you, if it allows you to see things from a different angle, subscribe to the channel. This way, we can continue this journey with more stories that also carry hidden truths. Leave. Like if, at any point, you felt that this story could be about someone you know or even yourself. And write in the comments, I'm with you until the end. That way I'll know you stayed with me until the last second. This strengthens the content and shows that it's worth continuing to bring this type of deeper, more human, more authentic investigation. And look, there's another video over here with a chilling story that will help you see even more of what happens when silence is kept. Click and keep going with me over there.